Jake Miller stood at the viewing window of the transport ship and watched Kepler Station grow larger in front of him. The massive space station looked like a giant metal flower floating in the darkness of space. Its 6 arms stretched out from the center, each one bigger than any building Jake had ever seen on Earth. Ships from different worlds move around the station like busy insects. Jake pressed his hand against the cool glass and felt his heart beating fast. He was actually here. After 2 years of tests, interviews, and training on Earth, he was one of only 3 humans accepted into the Galactic Defense Academy. His mom had cried when he left. His dad had shaken his hand and told him to make Earth proud. Now, Jake wondered if he was good enough to be here. The transport ship docked with a soft bump. Jake picked up his single bag and followed the other passengers toward the exit. Most of them were not human. He saw tall beings with blue skin and extra arms, small creatures covered in what looked like metal scales, and others that he could not even describe. They all seemed to know where they were going. Jake felt very small and lost. A voice spoke over the station speakers in perfect English. New cadets report to Docking Bay 7 for orientation. Follow the green lights on the floor. Jake looked down and saw thin green lines of light leading down the hallway. He followed them, staying behind a group of the blue-skinned aliens. Docking Bay 7 was huge. Hundreds of beings stood in neat rows facing a raised platform. Jake found an empty spot near the back and tried not to stare at his fellow cadets. Some looked almost human, except for strange skin colors or extra eyes. Others were so different that Jake was not sure how they even moved around. A massive creature walked onto the platform. It looked like a cross between a lizard and a dinosaur, standing upright on 2 legs. Its skin was dark green with lighter patches, and its eyes were bright yellow. When it spoke, its voice was deep and rough. I am Commander Voss. Welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy. You are here because your worlds believe you have what it takes to defend this galaxy. Most of you are wrong. The commander's yellow eyes swept across the crowd. Look around you. These beings will be your classmates for the next 2 years. Some of them will become your closest allies. Others will wash out and go home in shame. A few might even die during training. Jake felt a chill run down his back. Died during training? What had he gotten himself into? You will be assigned to mixed species squads. Commander Voss continued. You will eat together, train together, and succeed or fail together. Your first lesson starts now. Learn to work with species different from your own, or you will not survive here. A smaller alien walked onto the platform. This one looked more like an insect, with 4 arms and large compound eyes. Its voice was higher and faster than the commander's. When I call your name and squad number, move to the marked areas on the floor. Squad assignments are final. Do not ask for changes. The alien began reading names in languages Jake could not understand. He waited nervously as groups formed around numbered circles painted on the floor. Finally, he heard his name. Jake Miller, Human, Squad 12. Jake walked to the circle marked with a big 12 and found 3 other beings already waiting. One was about his height, but seemed to be made of living crystal. Light moved through its body in slow waves of blue and green. The second looked like a smaller version of Commander Voss, with the same lizard-like features, but brown skin instead of green. The third was completely covered in what looked like black metal armor, but Jake realized it was probably the being's actual skin. I am Crix 7, said the crystal being. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. I am from the Zephyrian Collective. This is my first time away from my home crystal gardens. The lizard being nodded. I am called Swiftclaw. My people are Draknari, like Commander Voss. I have trained for this since I was a hatchling. The armored being said nothing. It just stared at Jake with glowing red eyes. I'm Jake, he said, feeling awkward. I'm from Earth. Nice to meet you all. Earth, said Swiftclaw, tilting his head. Your species is new to the galaxy. What special abilities do humans possess? Jake thought about it. Humans did not have crystal bodies like Crix 7. They were not as big and strong as the Draknari. They definitely did not have armor for skin like their silent squad mate. We're pretty good at figuring things out, he said finally, and we don't give up easily. Swiftclaw made a sound that might have been laughter. All species say that about themselves. We will see what humans are really made of during training. The orientation continued for another hour. They learned about the station layout, the training schedule, and the rules. Jake tried to pay attention, but he kept looking around at the incredible variety of beings in the room. Some breathed different gases and wore special helmets. Others seemed to float slightly above the ground. A few looked so strange that Jake could not figure out which end was their head. After orientation, squads were led to their living quarters. Squad 12 was assigned to a small room with 4 beds that looked more like pods. Each pod was designed for a different type of being. Jake's looked almost normal, except it was longer and wider than beds on Earth. The Draknari do not sleep like other species, Swiftclaw explained as he examined his pod, which was filled with warm sand. We rest in heat. Crick 7's pod glowed with soft light. Zephyrians need light energy even while we rest, he said. Without it, our crystal structure becomes weak. The armored being, who they learned was called Iron Shell from the Vex Confederation, simply stood in his pod without explanation. Jake unpacked his few belongings and tried to make the space feel like home. It was impossible. Everything was alien, from the way the lights worked to the strange humming sound the station made. He thought about his family back on Earth and wondered if he had made a huge mistake. "Are you nervous?" Crix, 7 asked. The crystal being's light pattern seemed to move faster when he was curious. "A little," Jake admitted. "Everyone here seems so much more prepared than me." "I am also nervous," Crix, 7 said quietly. "My people are not warriors. We are builders and thinkers. I do not know if I belong here either." That made Jake feel a little better. At least he was not the only one who felt out of place. Swiftclaw looked up from his sand-filled pod. "Tomorrow we begin physical training. That is when we will learn what each species can truly do. Sleep well, Squad 12. We will need our strength." Jake lay down in his pod and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere far below, he could feel the artificial gravity of the station holding him down. Somewhere far above, the stars of the galaxy waited. Tomorrow, he would begin finding out if a human from Earth could survive in this place. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but his mind kept racing with questions about what tomorrow would bring. Jake woke up to a loud alarm that sounded like angry birds screaming. The lights in their room flashed red 3 times, then switched to bright white. His pod mates were already moving. Swiftclaw jumped out of his warm sand and began stretching his powerful legs. Crick 7's crystal body dimmed as he slowly rose from his glowing pod. Iron Shell had never seemed to sleep at all. "First day of physical training," Swiftclaw said with excitement in his voice. "Finally, we get to see what everyone can do." Jake rolled out his pod and grabbed his training clothes. They were made of some kind of stretchy material that felt strange against the skin. All the cadets wore the same gray uniforms, but they came in different shapes to fit different body types. The mess hall was chaos. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species tried to eat breakfast together. Jake watched a group of gas-breathing aliens eat through tubes connected to their helmets. Some species ate what looked like rocks. Others consumed glowing liquids that made their bodies change color. Jake's breakfast looked almost normal compared to everything else. It was some kind of protein bar and a drink that tasted like orange juice mixed with metal. He sat with his squad mates at a round table designed to fit their different body shapes. "Look around," Swiftclaw said between bites of raw meat. "See the Vex over there? They move faster than your eyes can follow. The Altarians by the window can read minds and talk to each other without speaking. The Draknari are the strongest beings in the galaxy." Jake looked where Swiftclaw pointed. The Vex were spider-like creatures that seemed to vibrate even when sitting still. The Altarians looked like tall, thin humans with large foreheads and completely white eyes. They sat perfectly still, not speaking, but somehow Jake could tell they were having deep conversations. "What about humans?" Crix, 7 asked, "What makes your species special?" Jake thought about it while chewing his protein bar. "I honestly don't know. We're not the fastest or the strongest. We can't read minds or see in the dark. I guess we're good at adapting to new situations." Swiftclaw made that laughing sound again. Adapting. Every species adapts. That is how life works. Before Jake could respond, the alarm sounded again. All the cadets stood up and began moving toward the training areas. Jake followed the crowd through corridors he had never seen before. The station was even bigger than he had thought. They entered a massive chamber with a dome-shaped ceiling that showed a projection of space. The floor was covered with different sections, some sandy, some rocky, some that looked like ice. In the center was a raised platform where Instructor Thane waited for them. Instructor Thane was a Draknari like Commander Voss, but even bigger. Scars covered his dark green skin, and one of his eyes was white instead of yellow. When he spoke, his voice made the floor vibrate. Physical conditioning begins now. You will be tested in strength, speed, endurance, and combat skills. Some of you will excel. Some of you will fail. Some of you will quit and go home crying to your families. The instructor's good. I swept across the assembled cadets. We will start with basic fitness. Running, climbing, lifting. Simple exercises that any warrior should master easily. The first test was a running course around the edge of the chamber. The track was marked with lanes for different types of beings. Some sections had different gravity settings. Others had different atmosphere, mixtures for aliens who breathed strange gases. Jake lined up with the other humanoid species in the standard gravity section. When the signal sounded, he began to run. Immediately, he knew he was in trouble. The Vex cadets disappeared in a blur of motion. They finished the course before Jake had completed his first lap. The Draknari were not as fast, but their powerful legs carried them forward with long, steady strides. Even Crix 7, despite his crystal body, moved with surprising grace. Jake ran as hard as he could, but he finished near the back of the group. His lungs burned and his legs felt like rubber. Around him, other cadets barely seemed winded. The next test was climbing. A wall stretched up toward the dome ceiling, covered with handholds of different sizes and shapes. Again, Jake watched his fellow cadets make it look easy. Creatures with multiple arms swarmed up the wall like it was flat ground. Others seemed to stick to the surface without using their hands at all. Jake climbed slowly and carefully. His human hands were not designed for the strange handholds. Halfway up, his arms began to shake from effort. He could hear other cadets talking below, probably wondering why the human was taking so long. When he finally reached the top, most of the other cadets were already down and waiting for the next test. Instructor Thane looked at Jake with his good eye and made notes on an electronic tablet. The strength test was even worse. Jake had always thought he was pretty strong for a human. He worked out regularly back on Earth and could lift more than most of his friends. But here, watching aliens lift weights that looked like small cars, he felt like a child. Swiftclaw lifted 3 times what Jake could manage. Iron Shell lifted even more, his metal skin showing no strain at all. Even some of the smaller aliens were stronger than Jake. When his turn came, the weight he could barely lift made Instructor Thane shake his head. Pathetic, the instructor said loud enough for everyone to hear. How did such a weak species qualify for this academy? Jake felt his face turn red with embarrassment. Around him, alien cadets whispered each other in their own languages. He could not understand the words, but their tone was clear. They were talking about the weak human who could not keep up. The final test of the day was basic combat training. Cadets were paired up to practice simple fighting moves using padded training weapons. Jake was matched with a Zephyrian cadet named Shinebright, who was about his size but made of the same living crystal as Crix 7. "Do not worry, human," Shinebright said in a musical voice. "I will be gentle with you." The combat exercise was supposed to be simple. One cadet attacked with padded staff. The other defended with a shield. Then they switched roles. Jake had learned some basic self-defense on Earth, but nothing had prepared him for fighting an alien. Shinebright moved like flowing water. His crystal body bent in ways that should have been impossible. When Jake tried to hit him with the staff, the Zephyrian simply twisted away. When Shinebright attacked, Jake could barely get a shield up in time. Other pairs finished their exercises quickly and stood watching Jake struggle. He could hear them talking about humans again. Words like slow and clumsy came through clearly even in alien languages. Finally, mercifully, Instructor Thane called an end to the training session. Jake's entire body ached. His clothes were soaked with sweat. Around him, most of the alien cadets looked fresh and ready for more. Tomorrow we will test your abilities in simulated combat situations, Instructor Thane announced. Those who cannot keep up will be sent home. No exceptions. As the cadets filed out of the training chamber, Jake heard more whispers. Some aliens were already talking about which species would wash out first. Humans were mentioned a lot. Squad 12 walked back to their quarters together. Swiftclaw and Ironshell seemed energized by the training. Crix, 7, was quiet, his light patterns moving slowly. How did humans ever survive long enough to reach space? Swiftclaw asked as they entered their room. Your species seems so fragile. Jake sat heavily on his pod. Every muscle in his body hurt. We survive by working together and never giving up. Maybe we're not the strongest or fastest, but we don't quit easily. That is what you said yesterday, Swiftclaw pointed out. But training is not about never giving up. It is about being strong enough to complete the mission. Ironshell spoke for the first time that day. His voice sounded like metal grinding against metal. The human is weak. He will not last a week. Jake looked around at his squad mates. They were not being mean, just honest from what they had seen today. Humans really did seem like the weakest species in the academy. Maybe you're right, Jake said quietly. But I'm not going home until they drag me out of here. Crix 7's light patterns suddenly moved faster. I had trouble today, too. My crystal body is not made for combat. Perhaps we weaker species should help each other. Swiftclaw snorted. This is military training, not a support group for the inadequate. That night, Jake lay in his pod staring at the ceiling again. His body hurt worse than it ever had in his life. Every alien he had met seemed faster, stronger, or more skilled than him. Tomorrow's training would probably be even harder. But as he drifted off to sleep, Jake remembered something his father had told him before he left Earth. Son, being the toughest doesn't mean you can hit the hardest. Sometimes it means you can take the most hits and keep standing. Maybe tomorrow he would find out what humans were really good at. The second day of training started earlier and harder than the first. Jake's muscles still ached from yesterday, but he forced himself out of his pod when the alarm sounded. Around him, his squad mates moved with the same energy as before. Aliens did not seem to get so the way humans did. Breakfast was quick and quiet. Jake noticed that other human cadets looked as tired as he felt. Lisa Park, a woman from his transport ship, sat at a nearby table picking at her protein bar. Danny Rodriguez, the third human in their class, had dark circles under his eyes. They nodded at each other, but did not talk. What was there to say? After breakfast, all the cadets were led to a different training chamber. This one was smaller, but more complex. The walls were covered with panels of blinking lights and moving parts. Strange machines hung from the ceiling on mechanical arms. In the center of the room was a raised platform surrounded by a shimmering energy barrier. Instructor Thane stood outside the barrier with several other alien instructors. His scarred face looked even more serious than usual. Today you will face simulated combat scenarios. These exercises use real energy weapons set to training levels. The pain is real. The danger is real. But the weapons will not cause permanent damage. One of the other instructors, a tall Altarian with pure white eyes, stepped forward. You will work in your assigned squads. Each squad will enter the combat zone and face a series of challenges. Your performance will be recorded and analyzed. Failure to work as a team will result in immediate removal from the academy. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Real weapons, even on training settings, sounded dangerous. He looked around at his fellow cadets. Most seemed excited or at least confident. The Vex were practically vibrating with anticipation. The Draknari were flexing their claws and showing their sharp teeth. Squad 1, enter the combat zone. Instructor Thane commanded. Jake watched as the first squad stepped through the energy barrier. The platform inside was larger than it looked from outside. As soon as all 4 squad members were inside, the environment began to change. Walls rose from the floor, creating a maze-like structure. Holographic enemies appeared in flashes of light. The exercise lasted about 10 minutes. Jake could hear the sound of energy weapons firing and alien voices shouting commands. When it was over, the first squad emerged looking tired but proud. One of them, a Draknari, had a burn mark on his arm where a training weapon had hit him. Squad after squad entered the combat zone. Some performed well, moving as coordinated teams and completing their objectives quickly. Others struggled with communication or failed to work together effectively. A few squads had members who were hurt badly enough to need medical attention. "Squad 12, you're next," Instructor Thane called. Jake's heart started beating faster. This was it. Time to see if humans could really survive in this place. He followed Swiftclaw, Crix, Seven, and Iron Shell through the energy barrier. Inside the combat zone, the air felt different, thicker somehow, and charged with electricity that made his skin tingle. The floor was covered with a soft material that absorbed sound. Weapon racks lined one wall, filled with various types of training weapons. "Choose your weapons," Swiftclaw said, already moving to a rack of staff-like devices. "I will take point and lead the attack." Iron Shell selected a heavy weapon that looked like a cross between a hammer and an energy cannon. Crix. Seven chose a smaller weapon design for his crystal hands. Jake picked up something that looked almost like the rifles he had trained with on Earth. The moment they were all armed, the exercise began. Walls shot around them, creating a complex maze. Holographic enemies appeared at the far end, alien soldiers in armor, carrying weapons that glowed with dangerous energy. "Move forward carefully," Swiftclaw whispered. "Watch for ambushes." They began advancing through the maze. Swiftclaw took the lead with his natural warrior instincts. Iron Shell followed, his heavy weapon ready. Crix. Seven stayed in the middle, using his crystal body to reflect light around corners and spot hidden enemies. Jake brought up the rear, trying to watch their backs while keeping up with the others. His human reflexes felt slow compared to his alien squad mates. When enemies appeared, the others were already firing before Jake could even aim. They worked their way through the first part of the maze without major problems. Swiftclaw's combat training showed as he led them around traps and ambush points. Iron Shell's powerful weapon destroyed cover that enemies tried to hide behind. Even Crix. Seven contributed by using his light-bending abilities to confuse holographic attackers. Jake started to feel like maybe they could do this. Maybe being the weakest member of the team did not matter as long as he did not get in the way. Then they reached the final challenge area. The maze opened into a large circular room with multiple levels connected by ramps and bridges. Holographic enemies surrounded them on all sides, above, below, and at their own level. The objective marker glowed on the far side of the room, but getting there meant crossing through heavy enemy fire. "We need to move fast," Swiftclaw said, studying the layout. "Iron Shell, can you clear a path with your heavy weapon?" "Yes, but I will need cover while I charge it up," Iron Shell replied in his grinding voice. Crix. 7. Use your light powers to blind the enemies on the upper levels. Jake, watch our flanks and call out any threats you see. It was a good plan. They moved out together, with Iron Shell charging his weapon while the others provided cover. Crix 7's crystal body blazed with light, creating confusion among the holographic enemies above them. Swiftclaw's accuracy with his staff weapon was impressive. Jake tried to do his part, but the action was happening too fast. Enemies appeared and disappeared before he could target them. Energy bolts flew in all directions. The noise was overwhelming. They were halfway across the room when everything went wrong. A group of holographic enemies appeared on their left flank, right where Jake was supposed to be watching. He saw them too late. His warning shout was lost in the noise of battle. The enemies fired a coordinated volley directly at the squad. Swiftclaw dodged with reptilian grace. Iron Shell's armor absorbed the hits without damage. Crix 7's crystal body scattered the energy harmlessly. But Jake was human. He had no special armor, no supernatural reflexes, no crystal body to protect him. The training weapons were set to hurt, but not kill, but they were still dangerous. The plasma bolt hit him squarely in the chest with the force of a sledgehammer. Jake felt his ribs crack as the energy burned through his training uniform. The impact lifted him off his feet and sent him flying backward through the air. He hit the wall behind them with a sound that made everyone in the combat zone stop what they were doing. His body folded around the impact point like a broken doll. He slid down the wall and crumpled to the floor, not moving. Medical emergency in Combat Zone 7. An instructor's voice called over the speakers. All training suspended immediately. The holographic enemies disappeared. The maze walls retracted into the floor. Jake's squad mates ran to where he lay motionless against the wall. "Jake!" Crick 7's crystal body pulsed with worried light patterns. "Jake, can you hear me?" Swiftclaw knelt beside him, his warrior training taking over. Do not move him. His spine could be damaged. Iron Shell stood guard, his weapon still ready, as if he could somehow fight off Jake's injuries. Through the energy barrier, Jake could see instructors and medical staff rushing toward the combat zone. Alien cadets pressed against the viewing windows, their faces showing shock and fear. Training weapons were not supposed to cause this kind of damage. Jake's vision was blurry, and his chest felt like it was on fire. He could taste blood in his mouth. When he tried to breathe, sharp pain shot through his side. Something was definitely broken inside. The medical team reached him within seconds. Altarian medics with their advanced healing abilities and sophisticated scanners. Their equipment hummed as it analyzes injuries. 3 broken ribs. One medic reported in the musical Altarian language that the universal translators converted to English. Concussion, internal bleeding, possible spinal damage. Prepare emergency surgery, another medic said. This level of trauma requires immediate treatment. Jake heard all of this through a fog of pain and confusion. His squad mates stood nearby, looking helpless. Other cadets watched from outside the combat zone, whispering among themselves about the fragile human who had been broken so easily. Through it all, one thought kept running through Jake's mind. His father's words from before he left Earth. Sometimes being tough means you can take the most hits and keep standing. Well, he had definitely taken a hit. Now everyone would see what humans were really made of. Jake lay on the cold floor of the combat zone, listening to the Altarian medics discuss his injuries in their musical language. Their scanners beeped and hummed as they confirmed broken ribs, internal bleeding, and a concussion that should have left him unconscious. The pain in his chest felt like someone had lit a fire inside his lungs. But as Jake listened to them talk about emergency surgery and how humans were too fragile for military training, something inside him got angry. Not angry at the medics or his squad mates or even the training exercise. Angry at the idea that one hit could stop him from doing what he came here to do. His grandfather had been a soldier in Earth's military. The old man had told Jake stories about battles where men kept fighting with bullets in their bodies and shrapnel in their bones. Pain is just information, his grandfather always said. It tells you something is wrong, but it does not tell you to quit. Jake took a careful breath, feeling the broken ribs grind against each other. The pain was incredible, but pain was just information. It told him he was hurt, but it did not tell him he was finished. Slowly, very slowly, Jake rolled onto his side. The Altarian medics immediately started talking faster, their translator devices struggling to keep up. His squad mates stepped closer, their alien faces showing worry and confusion. "Jake, do not move," Swiftclaw said urgently. "The medics say you have serious injuries. You need immediate treatment." Jake ignored him and pushed himself up to his hands and knees. The world spun around him, and his vision went dark for a moment. Blood dripped from his mouth onto the floor. Every breath sent fire through his chest. But he did not stop. "Human, you must lie still," one of the Altarian medics said in perfect English. "Your injuries require immediate medical intervention. Moving could cause further damage." Jake looked up at the medic through eyes that would not quite focus. "How long until you can patch me up enough to continue the exercise?" The medic's large white eyes went even wider. "Continue? Human, you have 3 broken ribs and internal bleeding. You require surgery, followed by several weeks of recovery time. Your training is over." "No," Jake said simply. He spit out a mouthful of blood and slowly pushed himself to his feet. The effort made him dizzy and sick. His legs shook and his vision kept going in and out of focus. But he stood up. Around him, everyone was completely silent. Alien cadets pressed against the viewing barriers, staring in disbelief. Instructors whispered among themselves in languages that the translators could not handle fast enough. Iron Shell was the first to speak. "This is impossible. The scanner confirmed his injuries are real and severe. He should be unconscious." Crick 7's crystal body pulsed with rapid light patterns that Jake had learned meant extreme confusion. "Jake, how are you standing? The medical readings show you should be in shock." Jake looked around the combat zone. The holographic enemies were gone, but the objective marker still glowed on the far side of the room. "Are we continuing the exercise or not?" he asked. Instructor Thane's voice came over the speakers, sounding as confused as everyone else. "Cadet Miller, you are seriously injured. Report to the medical bay immediately." "I can finish the mission," Jake replied. He picked up his training weapon from where he had dropped it. His hands shook, but his grip was steady. "My squad still needs to reach the objective." "This is madness," Swiftclaw said. "Even if you could move, you cannot fight in your condition." Jake looked at his reptilian squad mate and smiled, tasting blood on his lips. "Watch me." Before anyone could stop him, Jake started walking toward the objective marker. Each step sent spikes of pain through his broken ribs. His breathing was shallow and ragged. Blood from his internal injuries made him feel cold and weak. But he kept walking. "Restart the exercise," he called to the instructors. "My squad has a mission to complete." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Instructor Thane's voice came over the speakers again. "Exercise resuming in 10 seconds. All cadets return to positions." The maze walls rose from the floor again. Holographic enemies reappeared throughout the room. The sounds of simulated battle filled the air once more. Jake's squad mates looked at each other in amazement, then took their positions around him. If their human teammate was crazy enough to continue fighting with broken bones, they would follow his lead. The holographic enemies opened fire immediately. Energy bolts filled the air around them. Jake's reflexes were even slower than before, dulled by pain and injury. But something had changed in the way he moved. Before, Jake had been trying to avoid getting hit. Now he accepted that he was going to take damage and focused on completing the mission instead. When energy bolts came his way, he did not waste time dodging. He took the hits and kept moving forward. The training weapons burned his arms and legs as they struck. Each hit added to his injuries and made the pain worse. But Jake had already learned that he could function while hurt. A few more burns did not matter. His squad mates watched in amazement as Jake walked through enemy fire that would have stopped any of them. Swiftclaw was faster and stronger, but he had to dodge and take cover. Iron Shell's armor protected him, but he still moved carefully to avoid damage. Crick 7 uses light powers to hide from attacks. Jake just kept walking forward and shooting back. "Covering fire on the left," he called out, his voice steady despite the blood running down his chin. "Iron Shell, take out that heavy weapon position. Crick 7, blind the snipers on level 2. His squad mates responded automatically to his commands. Somehow, the injured human had become their leader. They watched him take hit after hit from training weapons and keep fighting, and it changed how they saw him. When a group of holographic enemies blocked their path, Jake walked straight into their fire. Energy bolts burned holes in his uniform and left smoking marks on his skin. But he reached the enemy position and eliminated them with precise shots from his training weapon. "How is he still moving?" Swiftclaw asked Crick 7 during a brief pause in the fighting. "I do not know," the crystal being replied. "But I am starting to understand why humans reach the stars." They fought their way across the room together. Jake's human endurance meant he could keep going when others would have collapsed from accumulated damage. His willingness to absorb enemy fire allowed his squad mates to move more freely and strike more effectively. When they reached the objective marker, Jake was covered in burns and bleeding from multiple wounds. His broken ribs made every breath agony. His concussion left him dizzy and confused. But he was still standing, still fighting, still leading his squad. The holographic enemies disappeared. The exercise was complete. Success indicators flashed around the objective marker. Mission accomplished. Jake said quietly. Then he sat down heavily on the floor, finally allowing himself to acknowledge how much everything hurt. His squad mates gathered around him, their alien faces showing a mixture of respect and disbelief. Through the viewing barriers, hundreds of other cadets watched in silence. Medical team to combat Zone 7. Instructor Thane's voice announced. Cadet Miller, report to the medical bay immediately. This time, that is an order. As the Altarian medics approached with their stretcher and emergency equipment, Jake looked up at his squad mates. How do we do? You just completed a combat exercise with 3 broken ribs and internal bleeding, Iron Shell said in his grinding voice. I have never seen anything like it. Crick 7's crystal body pulsed with slow, thoughtful patterns. My people have legends about warriors who continue fighting even after mortal wounds. We call them shard hearts because their will is harder than crystal. I think all humans must be shard hearts. Swiftclaw shook his reptilian head in amazement. I said yesterday that humans seem fragile. I was wrong. You are not fragile. You are something else entirely. As the medics loaded Jake onto their stretcher, word was already spreading throughout the academy. The human cadet had been seriously injured in training, then gotten up and completed the mission anyway. Alien cadets who had dismissed humans, as Week began asking questions about human physiology and psychology. What kind of species could function with that level of damage? What kind of warrior kept fighting when logic said they should quit? Jake closed his eyes as the medics carried him to the medical bay. His body was broken and battered, but for the first time since arriving at the academy, he felt like he belonged here. He had shown them what humans were really made of. Jake spent 3 days in the medical bay while Altarian healers repaired his broken ribs and internal injuries. Their technology was amazing. They could heal bones and organs with machines that sang soft melodies and glowed with warm light. But even the advanced alien medicine could not explain how Jake had remained conscious and functional with his injuries. Dr. Vel9, the head medical officer, was a tall Altarian with skin that shimmered like silver. She visited Jake every day to check his progress and asked the same questions over and over. Your brain scans show you definitely had a concussion, she said on the second day, studying her holographic displays. The trauma should have caused immediate unconsciousness. Your pain receptors were clearly registering extreme damage. How did you remain aware and mobile? Jake shrugged from his medical bed. I guess I have a high pain tolerance. No, Dr. Vel9 said firmly. This goes beyond pain tolerance. Your species appears to have a completely different response to physical trauma than any we have studied. We need to understand this. While Jake recovered, word of what happened spread throughout the academy like wildfire. The story grew with each telling. Some cadets said the human had completed the exercise with a hole blown through his chest. Others claimed he had continued fighting while his bones stuck out through his skin. The truth was impressive enough without exaggeration. On Jake's second day in the medical bay, his squad mates visited him. Swiftclaw brought news from the training floors. Everyone is talking about what you did, the Draknari said, settling his large body into a chair designed for reptilian anatomy. The instructors are reviewing the combat recordings over and over. Other species are asking questions about human biology. Crick 7's crystal body pulsed with excited light patterns. My roommate is Zephyrian from a different squad. He said their instructor stopped their training yesterday to show them a video of your exercise. Now, they want to know if all humans are like you. Are we? Iron Shell asked in his grinding voice. Are all humans capable of functioning with severe injuries? Jake thought about it. Back on Earth, he had heard stories about people doing impossible things when they had to. Mothers lifting cars off their children. Soldiers continuing to fight with terrible wounds. Athletes competing with broken bones. I think most humans can push through pain when something important is at stake. We just don't usually have to. But this was just training, Swiftclaw pointed out. It was not a real emergency. Why did you continue when you could have safely quit? Jake was quiet for a moment. How could he explain to alien warriors that quitting felt worse than pain? That humans seemed to have something inside them that refused to accept defeat? I came here to prove that humans belong in the galaxy, he said finally. Giving up because I got hurt would have proven the opposite. His squad mates exchanged looks that Jake was learning to recognize. It was the expression aliens got when humans did something that made no logical sense. On his third day in medical, Jake had more visitors. Lisa Park and Danny Rodriguez, the other two humans in their class, came to see him. Both looked exhausted and covered in minor injuries from their own training. "The other cadets keep asking us about you," Lisa said, sitting on the edge of his medical bed. "They want to know if we can do what you did." "Can you?" Jake asked. Danny showed him a bandaged arm. "I dislocated my shoulder during combat training yesterday. Kept fighting for another 20 minutes before the exercise ended. The medics said most species would have been incapacitated immediately." Lisa nodded. "I've been pushing myself harder than ever before. Turns out I can handle a lot more punishment than I thought. The alien cadets are starting to look at us differently." "How so?" Jake asked. "They're not treating us like we're fragile anymore," she explained. "Yesterday, a Vex cadet asked me to be his training partner specifically because he heard humans don't quit easily. He wanted to test his endurance against mine." "Who won?" Lisa smiled. "He was faster and stronger, but I outlasted him. He collapsed from exhaustion after 2 hours. I kept going for another hour before the instructors called it off." Jake felt a surge of pride. It was not just him. Other humans were showing the galaxy what their species could do. Over the next few days, stories about human endurance began circulating throughout the academy. A Draknari instructor mentioned that human cadets were the only ones who had never asked for medical leave during training. A Vex speed training specialist noted that humans could not match Vex velocity, but they could maintain their top speed longer than any other species. Most interesting were the psychological evaluations. Altarian mind healers who specialize in combat trauma reported that humans showed unprecedented resistance to fear and despair. While other species became cautious or defensive after taking damage, humans seemed to become more determined. Dr. Vel9 called it inverse trauma response. The more punishment humans took, the harder they fought back. When Jake was finally cleared to return to training, he found that everything had changed. Alien cadets who had ignored him before now watched his every move. Instructors who had dismissed humans as weak began designing special exercises to test human endurance. His first day back, Jake was approached by cadets from other squads. A group of Zephyrians asked if he would help them with endurance training. A Vex wanted to study human pain tolerance for his research project. Even some Draknari, the galaxy's legendary warriors, asked Jake to teach them human mental conditioning techniques. "This is very strange," Swiftclaw commented as they walked to the training chambers. "Before your accident, you were considered the weakest cadet in our class. Now everyone wants to learn from you." "I'm still the weakest," Jake pointed out. "I can't run as fast as a Vex or lift as much as a Draknari. But you can take more damage than any of us and keep fighting," Crix 7 said. "That is a different kind of strength." The training exercises have been modified since Jake's injury. Instructors now included endurance challenges designed specifically to test different species' limits. Humans consistently outlasted everyone else in activities that required sustained effort despite accumulating damage or fatigue. In one exercise, cadets had to carry heavy packs across difficult terrain while being hit by training weapons. Most aliens dropped out after a few hits, even though the weapons were set to low power. The humans kept going until the instructors ordered them to stop. In another test, squads had to complete obstacle courses while dealing with various environmental hazards: extreme heat, cold, low oxygen, loud noises. Other species performed well initially, but gradually slowed down as the conditions wore on them. Humans maintained steady performance throughout the entire course. Word about human capabilities began reaching beyond the academy. Galactic military commanders started asking questions about this new species that seemed immune to conventional concepts of acceptable casualties. Recruitment officers from various galactic defense forces began expressing interest in human personnel. Jake found all the attention overwhelming. He had just been trying to complete his training. He never intended to represent his entire species or change how the galaxy viewed humans. But the changes were undeniable. Human cadets were no longer seen as weak links to be protected. They were becoming valued team members, specifically because of their ability to continue functioning under conditions that would stop other species. "You have started something important," Dr. Vel9 told Jake during his final medical checkup. "Our preliminary study suggests that human endurance capabilities could revolutionize galactic military doctrine. We are requesting permission to conduct comprehensive research on human physiological and psychological responses to combat stress." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means your species may have given the galaxy a new definition of what it means to be a warrior," she replied. "Physical strength and speed are impressive, but the ability to refuse defeat may be more valuable than either." As Jake left the medical bay and returned to full training status, he realized that something fundamental had changed at the Academy. Humans were no longer trying to prove they belonged. They had already proven it. Now they were teaching everyone else what they could accomplish when they refused to quit. Commander Voss called a special assembly 2 weeks after Jake's return to training. All cadets gathered in the main auditorium, a vast chamber that could hold thousands of beings from different worlds. The commander's massive form dominated the speaking platform as his yellow eyes surveyed the assembled students. "Recent events have raised questions about the capabilities of different species," he began, his deep voice carrying clearly through the hall. "Some cadets have demonstrated abilities that challenge our understanding of combat effectiveness. Others have expressed doubt about their own limitations." Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He could feel hundreds of alien eyes looking in his direction. Ever since word had spread about his incident in the combat zone, he had become the unofficial representative of human endurance. "Therefore," Commander Voss continued, "we will conduct a comprehensive species capability assessment. This will not be ordinary training. It will be a test designed to push every cadet beyond their known limits." Murmurs spread through the auditorium in dozens of different languages. Jake heard Swiftclaw make a low growling sound that meant either excitement or worry. Crix 7's crystal body dimmed with what Jake had learned was nervousness. "The test will last 72 hours, the commander announced. "Squads will face challenges designed to test every aspect of military readiness: physical endurance, mental resilience, tactical thinking, and team cohesion. The environment will be hostile. The scenarios will be realistic. Some of you will fail." Dr. Vel9 stepped forward to address medical concerns. "All participants will be monitored continuously. However, cadets will not be removed from the test unless they are in immediate life-threatening danger. Pain, exhaustion, and minor injuries are part of the evaluation." Jake felt his squad mates tense around him. This test was clearly designed with humans in mind. The instructors wanted to see if other species could match human endurance under extreme conditions. Over the next 3 days, the Academy staff prepared for the test. Special environmental chambers were activated that could simulate any planet in known space. Advanced holographic systems created scenarios based on real combat situations from galactic history. Medical teams positioned themselves throughout the facility. On the morning of the test, Jake woke to find his squad mates already preparing. Swiftclaw was performing complex stretching exercises that looked like a deadly dance. Iron Shell was checking and rechecking his equipment with mechanical precision. Crix 7 was meditating, his crystal body glowing with steady inner light. "Are you ready for this?" Swiftclaw asked Jake as they suited up in full combat gear. "As ready as anyone can be for something designed to break us," Jake replied, adjusting his equipment harness. The gear was heavier than their normal training equipment and included survival supplies for extended operations. "The other squads are nervous," Crix 7 reported. "Many alien species have never attempted sustained operations lasting multiple days. Their biology is not designed for it." "What about humans?" Iron Shell asked in his grinding voice. Jake thought about Earth's military history. Soldiers who had fought for days without rest, explorers who had survived weeks in hostile environments, athletes who had pushed their bodies beyond what should have been possible. Humans have always been good at suffering through things. I guess we'll find out how good. The test began at dawn. All squads were transported to different sections of a massive environmental complex deep within the station. Each team faced unique challenges, but all were designed to simulate extended combat operations under harsh conditions. Squad 12 found themselves in a desert environment with temperatures that fluctuated between scorching heat during the day and freezing cold at night. Their mission was to cross 50 kilometers of hostile terrain while being hunted by enemy forces, locate and secure 3 objective points, and signal for extraction. The first day was brutal. The artificial sun beat down mercilessly, and their water supplies had to be carefully rationed. The terrain was rocky and difficult, designed to exhaust anyone trying to cross it. Holographic enemies appeared randomly, forcing a fight while already tired from travel. Swiftclaw handled the heat better than Jake expected, but his reptilian biology made him sluggish in the cold desert nights. Iron Shell's metal skin became almost too hot to touch during the day and conducted cold painfully at night. Crick's 7's crystal structure was affected by the temperature extremes, making him brittle and slow. Jake found the conditions uncomfortable but manageable. Human biology was designed for adaptability. His ancestors had survived ice ages and crossed burning deserts. This was just another environment to endure. By the end of the first day, they had covered 15 kilometers and secured 1 objective point. Other squads' progress reports came over their communication system. Several teams were already requesting medical assistance. 2 squads had withdrawn entirely when their members collapsed from heat exhaustion. "How are you feeling?" Swiftclaw asked Jake as they made camp for the night. "Tired, hot, thirsty," Jake replied honestly, "but I can keep going." "All day, you have maintained the same pace," Crick's 7 observed. "The rest of us are struggling with the environmental conditions, but you seem unaffected." "I'm affected," Jake said. "I just don't let it slow me down." The second day was worse. The holographic enemies became more aggressive and numerous. The temperature rose even higher. Their water supplies ran dangerously low. Worse, they received distress calls from other squads over their communicators. A team of Altarians had become disoriented in the heat and were lost somewhere in the desert. A squad of Vex had pushed themselves to exhaustion trying to speed through the course and were now unable to continue. Even some Draknari teams were struggling with the sustained physical demands. "Should we assist the other squads?" Crick's 7 asked as they listened to another distress call. "Our mission comes first," Swiftclaw said firmly. "This is a test of our capabilities, not a rescue operation." Jake looked at his squad mates. Swiftclaw was right from a tactical standpoint, but something felt wrong about ignoring cadets in trouble. What if we can help them without compromising our mission? "How?" Iron Shell asked. Jake studied their route on his tactical display. "The Altarian squad is only 2 kilometers off our path to the second objective. We could reach them, give them some of our water, and still make our timeline." "We barely have enough water for ourselves," Swiftclaw pointed out. "Humans can go longer without water than most species," Jake said. "I can reduce my rations and share with them." His squad mates looked at him like he was suggesting something crazy, which Jake realized he probably was. Voluntarily dehydrating himself during a desert survival test was not tactically sound, but it was the right thing to do. They detoured to help the lost Altarian squad, sharing water and providing navigation assistance. Jake gave away half his remaining water supply, leaving himself with barely enough to survive the final day. The pattern repeated throughout the second day. When they encountered other struggling squads, Jake consistently volunteered to share resources or provide assistance, even when it meant reducing his own safety margins. By the third day, Jake was operating on minimal water and food. His lips were cracked, his skin was burned by the artificial sun, and his body ached from 2 days of constant movement across difficult terrain. But he kept going. More importantly, his squad mates began following his example. Swiftclaw shared his emergency rations with exhausted Vex cadets. Iron Shell used his strength to help carry injured team members from other squads. Crick's 7 used his light abilities to guide lost teams toward their objectives. As they approached the final objective point, Squad 12 had somehow accumulated members from 4 other teams. Alien cadets who could no longer continue on their own were being supported by Jake's squad mates, who had learned from watching Jake that completing the mission was less important than taking care of each other. When they finally reached the extraction point on the evening of the third day, they were leading a column of nearly 20 cadets from different species. Many of the aliens were in poor condition, dehydrated, exhausted, and suffering from exposure. But they were all still moving because humans had shown them that giving up was not acceptable. As the medical teams rushed forward to treat the more seriously affected cadets, Commander Voss approached Squad 12. His yellow eyes studied the mixed group of aliens being supported by humans who looked just as tired but were still functioning. Cadet Miller, the commander said, "Your squad completed all objectives and assisted multiple other teams. However, you also compromised your own safety margins to help competitors in what was designed as an individual assessment. Explain your reasoning." Jake stood at attention, despite his exhaustion. "Sir, the mission was to demonstrate species capabilities under extreme conditions. Humans are capable of sacrifice for the greater good. That seemed like an important capability to demonstrate." Commander Voss was quiet for a long moment. Around them, alien cadets who had been helped by Squad 12 gathered to listen to the conversation. "Indeed," the commander said finally, "it appears we have learned something valuable about human capabilities. And perhaps other species have learned something valuable about their own potential when properly motivated." As the test results were analyzed over the following days, one fact became clear. Human cadets had consistently outperformed expectations not just in endurance, but in their willingness to help others succeed even at personal cost. It was a lesson that would reshape how the galaxy thought about strength and endurance, and what it truly meant to be a warrior. The week following the endurance test brought dramatic changes to daily life at the academy. Jake noticed at first in small ways, alien cadets nodding respectfully when he passed in the corridors, instructors asking for his input during tactical discussions, even the food service staff treating him with new courtesy. But the biggest change was in how other species viewed not just Jake, but all humans. During morning physical training, Jake found himself partnered with Shinebright, the Zephyrian who had easily defeated him in their first combat exercise weeks ago. This time, when they sparred, something was different. "I have been thinking about our first match," Shinebright said as they circled each other with practice weapons. "I defeated you easily because I was faster and more flexible. But I realize now that I did not truly win. You knocked me down pretty quickly," Jake pointed out, blocking a strike from the crystal being's staff. "Yes, but you got back up," Shinebright replied. "Every time I hit you, you stood up again. I thought this meant you were slow to learn. Now I understand it meant you refused to accept defeat." They continued sparring, but Jake noticed that Shinebright was no longer trying to end the match quickly. Instead, the Zephyrian seemed to be testing his own endurance against Jake's persistence. After 20 minutes of continuous combat, Shinebright finally stepped back. "I am exhausted," he admitted, his crystal body dimming. "But you could continue, could you not?" Jake was breathing hard and covered in sweat, but he nodded. "For a while longer, yes." "This is what my people call Shardheart," Shinebright explained. "We have legends of warriors whose will was harder than crystal, who would fight until their bodies literally broke apart. We thought they were myths. Now I think they were stories about beings like humans." Similar conversations were happening throughout the academy. In the tactical studies classroom, Professor Kethmore, an ancient Altarian strategist, had begun incorporating human case studies into his lessons. Traditional military doctrine assumes that forces will withdraw when casualties reach certain percentages, the professor explained to his mixed species class. Human military history suggests this assumption may be flawed. He displayed holographic battle scenarios from Earth's past. In this engagement, human forces continued fighting effectively despite sustaining 70% casualties. In this siege, human defenders held their position for months without supplies. These examples suggest that human forces may remain combat effective long past the point where other species would consider retreat. A Draknari cadet raised his clawed hand. "Professor, these seem like examples of poor tactical judgment. Surely preserving forces for future battles is more important than fighting hopeless engagements." "An excellent point," Professor Kethmore agreed. "However, consider this. If your enemy knows you will retreat at 30% casualties, they only need to inflict 30% casualties to achieve victory. If your enemy knows you will never retreat, they must achieve total annihilation to win. Which enemy would you prefer to face? The classroom fell silent as alien cadets considered the implications. Jake's own squad had undergone the most dramatic transformation. Iron Shell, who had originally dismissed Jake as weak, now sought his advice on mental conditioning techniques. My people pride themselves on physical durability, Iron Shell explained during one of their evening conversations in their quarters. Our metal skin protects us from most damage, but you have taught me that true durability comes from within. I didn't teach you anything, Jake protested. I just did what I had to do. Exactly, Iron Shell replied in his grinding voice. You did what had to be done, regardless of personal cost. This is not how most species think. Swiftclaw had become fascinated with human psychology. The Draknari warrior spent hours reading about Earth's military traditions and human concepts of honor and duty. Your species has an interesting relationship with death, Swiftclaw observed one evening. Most beings fear death and structure their behavior around avoiding it. Humans seem to fear failure more than death. I wouldn't say we don't fear death, Jake said carefully, but we have concepts like duty and honor that can be more important than survival. Yes, this is what I find fascinating, Swiftclaw continued. Draknari are warriors by nature. We are bred for combat and trained from hatching. Yet humans, who evolved from prey animals, display warrior instincts that surpass our own. Crix 7 had become Jake's most devoted student, constantly asking questions about human endurance and mental toughness. The crystal being had started training himself to ignore pain and discomfort with mixed results. Yesterday I completed the obstacle course while my left arm was damaged. Crix 7 reported proudly. I did not stop even though my crystal structure was cracking. That's good, Jake said, though he was concerned about his friend pushing himself too hard. But remember, the goal isn't to get hurt. It's to complete the mission despite getting hurt. I understand the difference, Crix 7 assured him, but I want to learn human-style resilience. My people are builders and artists. We have never been warriors. But watching you has shown me that any species can develop warrior qualities if they choose to. The changes weren't limited to individual relationships. Academy policy was evolving to account for human capabilities. Training exercises were extended to test long-term endurance. Medical protocols were updated to reflect human pain tolerance. Even the graduation requirements were modified to include assessments of mental resilience alongside traditional physical skills. Dr. Velnine published her preliminary research on human physiology and psychology, with Jake as the primary case study. Her findings were circulated throughout the galactic military community and caused significant discussion. Humans appear to possess a unique combination of physiological and psychological traits, she explained to Jake during one of their regular checkups. Your pain tolerance is exceptional, but not unique. Your endurance is impressive, but other species can match it in specific conditions. What makes humans remarkable is your psychological response to adversity. How so? Jake asked. Most species become more cautious after experiencing trauma or pain. It is an evolutionary survival mechanism. Humans often become more determined. You seem to interpret damage as motivation rather than warning. She showed him brain scans comparing human and alien responses to stress. When other species experience pain or fear, their brain activity shows patterns consistent with avoidance behavior. Human brains show increased activity in areas associated with problem-solving and determination. Is that good or bad? Jake wondered. From a survival standpoint, it is incredibly valuable, Dr. Velnine replied. From a personal safety standpoint, it is somewhat concerning. Humans appear to have evolved the ability to override their own survival instincts when necessary. The most significant change came during a special assembly near the end of their training semester. Commander Voss announced new squad leadership assignments based on performance evaluations. Squad leadership will now be based on demonstrated ability to maintain unit cohesion under extreme conditions, the commander announced. Physical strength and tactical knowledge remain important, but the ability to inspire others to continue fighting despite adversity has proven most valuable. Jake was surprised when his name was called as the new leader of Squad 12. Around the auditorium, Other human cadets were being assigned leadership roles in their squads as well. After the assembly, Swiftclaw approached Jake with something that might have been a smile on his reptilian features. "You realize what this means?" Swiftclaw asked. "That the instructors have lost their minds?" Jake suggested. "No," Swiftclaw replied. "It means that humans have changed how this galaxy defines strength. For thousands of years, military leadership has gone to the physically strongest or most tactically gifted. Now it goes to those who refuse to quit." Iron Shell joined the conversation. "My people have a saying, the strongest metal is forged in the hottest fire. I think humans are made of stronger metal than any of us realized." Crix 7's crystal body pulsed with warm light patterns. "Jake, when you first arrived, we thought humans were the weakest species in the Academy. Now we understand that you are the most dangerous." "Dangerous?" Jake asked, confused. "Dangerous to defeat," Crix 7 explained. "An enemy can break your bones, burn your skin, exhaust your body, but they cannot break your will. That makes humans the most dangerous opponents in the galaxy." As Jake looked around at his alien friends and fellow cadets, he realized that something fundamental had shifted. Humans were no longer trying to prove they belonged among the galactic community. They had proven it so thoroughly that other species were now trying to learn from them. The weak had become the teachers. The fragile had become the unbreakable. And the galaxy was beginning to understand that true strength had nothing to do with how hard you could hit, and everything to do with how many times you get back up. The changes weren't limited to individual relationships. Academy policy was evolving to account for human capabilities. Training exercises were extended to test long-term endurance. Medical protocols were updated to reflect human pain tolerance. Even the graduation requirements were modified to include assessments of mental resilience alongside traditional physical skills. Dr. Velnine published her preliminary research on human physiology and psychology, with Jake as the primary case study. Her findings were circulated throughout the galactic military community and caused significant discussion. Humans appear to possess a unique combination of physiological and psychological traits, she explained to Jake during one of their regular checkups. "Your pain tolerance is exceptional, but not unique. Your endurance is impressive, but other species can match it in specific conditions. What makes humans remarkable is your psychological response to adversity." "How so?" Jake asked. "Most species become more cautious after experiencing trauma or pain. It is an evolutionary survival mechanism. Humans often become more determined. You seem to interpret damage as motivation rather than warning." She showed him brain scans comparing human and alien responses to stress. When other species experience pain or fear, their brain activity shows patterns consistent with avoidance behavior. Human brains show increased activity in areas associated with problem-solving and determination. "Is that good or bad?" Jake wondered. "From a survival standpoint, it is incredibly valuable," Dr. Velnine replied. "From a personal safety standpoint, it is somewhat concerning. Humans appear to have evolved the ability to override their own survival instincts when necessary." The most significant change came during a special assembly near the end of their training semester. Commander Voss announced new squad leadership assignments based on performance evaluations. Squad leadership will now be based on demonstrated ability to maintain unit cohesion under extreme conditions, the commander announced. Physical strength and tactical knowledge remain important, but the ability to inspire others to continue fighting despite adversity has proven most valuable. Jake was surprised when his name was called as the new leader of Squad 12. Around the auditorium, other human cadets were being assigned leadership roles in their squads as well. After the assembly, Swiftclaw approached Jake with something that might have been a smile on his reptilian features. "You realize what this means?" Swiftclaw asked. "That the instructors have lost their minds?" Jake suggested. "No," Swiftclaw replied. "It means that humans have changed how this galaxy defines strength. For thousands of years, military leadership has gone to the physically strongest or most tactically gifted. Now it goes to those who refuse to quit." Iron Shell joined the conversation. "My people have a saying, the strongest metal is forged in the hottest fire. I think humans are made of stronger metal than any of us realized." Crick 7's crystal body pulsed with warm light patterns. Jake, when you first arrived, we thought humans were the weakest species in the Academy. Now we understand that you are the most dangerous. Dangerous? Jake asked, confused. Dangerous to defeat. Crix 7 explained. An enemy can break your bones, burn your skin, exhaust your body, but they cannot break your will. That makes humans the most dangerous opponents in the galaxy. As Jake looked around at his alien friends and fellow cadets, he realized that something fundamental had shifted. Humans were no longer trying to prove they belonged among the galactic community. They had proven it so thoroughly that other species were now trying to learn from them. The weak had become the teachers. The fragile had become the unbreakable. And the galaxy was beginning to understand that true strength had nothing to do with how hard you could hit, and everything to do with how many times you get back up. 2 years after Jake Miller first stepped off the transport ship onto Kepler Station, he stood in the Academy's grand graduation hall, wearing the blue and silver uniform of a newly commissioned galactic defense officer. The ceremony hall was packed with beings from dozens of worlds, family members who had traveled across the galaxy to watch their children become defenders of civilized space. Jake's parents sat in the human section, looking proud and slightly overwhelmed by the alien technology and diverse crowd around them. His mother had cried when she saw him in uniform. His father had simply nodded and said, "You look like a soldier, son." The graduation ceremony itself was a complex affair designed to honor the traditions of many different species. Draknari battle drums thundered through the hall, while Altarian light singers created beautiful patterns in the air. Zephyrian crystal chimes provided musical harmony, and Vex percussion added rhythm that made the floor vibrate. Commander Voss stood at the podium, his massive form commanding attention from every being in the hall. His yellow eyes swept across the graduating class as he began the traditional address. 2 years ago, you came to this academy as individuals representing your separate worlds, he began. Today, you leave as officers of the Galactic Defense Force, sworn to protect all worlds and all species. Jake looked around at his fellow graduates. Many faces had become familiar over the past 2 years. Some had washed out during training and were not here today. Others had struggled but eventually succeeded. A few had excelled from the beginning and would go on to prestigious assignments. But Jake noticed something that had not been there at the beginning: the way alien cadets looked at human graduates with respect and even admiration. The weak species from the backwater planet had become something else entirely. This graduating class has achieved something remarkable, Commander Voss continued. They have redefined our understanding of military effectiveness and proven that strength comes in many forms. The commander's gaze found Jake in the crowd. Some of you arrived with impressive physical capabilities. Others brought advanced technology or natural talents. But all of you learned that the most important weapon any soldier carries is the refusal to accept defeat. Individual awards were presented first. Jake watched as his classmates received recognition for outstanding performance in various fields. Swiftclaw earned honors in tactical leadership. Crix 7 received an award for innovative engineering solutions. Iron Shell was recognized for defensive excellence. When Jake's name was called, he was surprised to hear that he was receiving the Galactic Cross for exceptional valor, the highest honor the Academy could bestow. Lieutenant Jake Miller, Commander Voss announced as Jake walked to the platform, for demonstrating extraordinary courage under fire, inspiring others through personal example, and redefining the meaning of military resilience. As Jake accepted the medal, he could hear applause from throughout the hall. But what moved him most was seeing alien families in the audience standing to honor a human they had never met. The respect was not just for him, but for what he represented. After the individual awards, Commander Voss made an unprecedented announcement. Due to recent developments in our understanding of combat effectiveness, the Galactic Defense Academy will be implementing significant changes to our training program, he said. Effective immediately, all cadets will receive instruction in human-style endurance training and mental resilience techniques. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the graduation hall. This was the first time in the Academy's 1,000-year history that training methods from a single species would be adopted for all students. Furthermore, the commander continued, human officers will be specially assigned to teach these new courses. The species that arrived here, students will now serve as instructors for the entire galaxy. Jake felt a surge of pride mixed with overwhelming responsibility. Humans had not just proven they belonged in the galactic community. They were now being asked to help shape how the galaxy defended itself. The ceremony concluded with a traditional oath of service, spoken simultaneously in dozens of languages. Jake recited the words in English while around him. His classmates spoke the same promises in their native tongues. When Jake's name was called, he was surprised to hear that he was receiving the Galactic Cross for exceptional valor, the highest honor the Academy could bestow. Lieutenant Jake Miller, Commander Voss announced as Jake walked to the platform, for demonstrating extraordinary courage under fire, inspiring others through personal example, and redefining the meaning of military resilience. As Jake accepted the medal, he could hear applause from throughout the hall. But what moved him most was seeing alien families in the audience, standing to honor a human they had never met. The respect was not just for him, but for what he represented. After the individual awards, Commander Voss made an unprecedented announcement. Due to recent developments in our understanding of combat effectiveness, the Galactic Defense Academy will be implementing significant changes to our training program, he said. Effective immediately, all cadets will receive instruction in human-style endurance training and mental resilience techniques. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the graduation hall. This was the first time in the Academy's 1,000-year history that training methods from a single species would be adopted for all students. Furthermore, the commander continued, human officers will be specially assigned to teach these new courses. The species that arrived here, students will now serve as instructors for the entire galaxy. Jake felt a surge of pride mixed with overwhelming responsibility. Humans had not just proven they belonged in the galactic community. They were now being asked to help shape how the galaxy defended itself. The ceremony concluded with a traditional oath of service, spoken simultaneously in dozens of languages. Jake recited the words in English while around him. His classmates spoke the same promises in their native tongues. I swear to defend the innocent, protect the weak, and stand against darkness wherever it may arise. I will not yield in the face of adversity, nor abandon my duty in the hour of greatest need. By my honor and my life, I pledge myself to the defense of all free beings in this galaxy. As the last words echoed to the hall, Jake realized how much those words meant to him. 2 years ago, he had been trying to prove that humans deserved a place among the stars. Now he understood that humans had a responsibility to help protect those stars. After the ceremony, there was a reception where families could meet with the new graduates. Jake was surrounded by well-wishers from different species, but the conversation that meant the most to him came from an unexpected source. Dr. Velnine approached him carrying a data tablet filled with research notes. Lieutenant Miller, I wanted to thank you personally. Your cooperation with our medical studies has led to breakthroughs in understanding species diversity that will benefit the entire galactic community. What kind of breakthroughs? Jake asked. We have learned that every species has hidden capabilities that emerge only under extreme stress, she explained. Humans were the first to demonstrate this, but our research has now identified similar potential in other species. The galaxy is stronger than we realized. She showed him data comparing graduation rates before and after the Academy's training changes. Incorporating human-style resilience training has increased overall graduation rates by 30%. More importantly, it has taught all species that their limitations are often psychological rather than physical. Jake's parents joined the conversation, looking fascinated by the silver-skinned Altarian doctor. Dr. Velnine graciously explained her research in terms they could understand, describing how their son had helped change galactic military doctrine. Your boy didn't just succeed at our academy, she told them. He taught us that we had been thinking about success all wrong. Later that evening, Squad 12 gathered for a private celebration in their old quarters. The room looked exactly the same as when they had first arrived, but everything else had changed. So what happens now? Crix 7 asked, his crystal body glowing with contentment. We go to our assignments and never see each other again. Speak for yourself, Swiftclaw said with his equivalent of a grin. I specifically requested assignment to a mixed species unit. I want to continue serving with humans. As did I, Ironshell added. Human leadership methods have proven effective. I wish to learn more. Jake looked around at his alien friends, who had become closer than brothers. Maybe we won't serve together, but we'll always be Squad 12, and we'll carry what we've learned here to wherever we go. Over the following months, Jake's new assignment took him to frontier worlds where he commanded.